Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we will be talking about people who encountered the devil himself, stories that have been shared through the years, and even personal stories of mine. If you're interested in this type of content, please subscribe and leave a comment down below. With that being said, let's get started. Who is the devil? Also known as the boogeyman, the keeper of hell, and the most common name, Satan. Satan was a fallen angel.
An angel. What's your name? Satan.
He rebelled against God and was casted out to the underworld, also known as the fire pit. Now his main agenda is to take as many souls as he can. By the help of his minions, the demons, that are powerful enough to possess humans that give them access to come in. They're here to collect souls. If you're interested in a video about demons, leave a comment down below. Our first story takes place in Tijuana, Mexico, at a famous bar called Aloha. This club was said to be the best place to hang out, to drink, dance, and party all night in the 1960s. Many people would gather around for a good night at the Aloha bar. It is said that a very beautiful woman walked in with a group of friends. Let's just call this girl Sandra. Sandra was the prettiest girl at the club that night. Every guy in there wanted to dance with her. As the night went on, she kept rejecting every guy that approached her. According to her, they were not up to her standards. A very handsome man walked in, and every girl in the club noticed him. He was tall, with pale skin, with colored eyes, and dark hair. He was well dressed and seemed to come from money. The handsome gentleman starts to walk towards the group of friends and notices Sandra sitting down. The man says hello and asks Sandra to dance with him. She immediately said yes. As she was walking with him, holding his hand, she could see the other girls in the club staring at her with jealousy. Once they got to the dance floor, the young man asked her, "Please don't look at my feet. I get nervous when I dance." She laughed and said, "Okay." They started dancing, and Sandra was amazed of how good of a dancer he was. As they were dancing, she became curious, and she looked down at his feet. The man had hooves for feet. In terror, Sandra didn't know how to react. When she looked up, she noticed that they were no longer dancing, but floating in midair. She looked at him, and he was no longer a handsome man, but a person with horns and black eyes. He looked at her and said, "I told you not to look down at my feet." Sandra screamed and fainted in the middle of the dance floor. The music stops and all eyes are on her. Instantly, a smell of rotten flesh took over the whole building. Her friends come running down to the dance floor to help her. Sandra mumbles, "I just danced with the devil." Similar stories have been told around Mexico in different states. It is said that the devil is out and free at night, and sometimes he comes out to have some fun. The next encounter takes place in a small ranch in Mexico, where everyone knows everyone. Back in the day, it was hard to find ways to entertain yourself. There was no TV, phones, or computers. The men would usually gather themselves at a house where they can sit down and play cards. In Mexico, there's a saying that you should never play cards late at night. If you do, the devil will reveal himself to you. This story is about a man named Martin. Martin would gather around with his friends and would drink beer and play cards. Usually, They would last all night, playing and drinking. This was his routine. No one could tell him nothing because he would get mad. To him, drinking and playing cards was his hobby. But one night, everyone decided to cut it quits and go home. Martin never had to walk home by himself at night because they would always stop playing when the sun came up. So that night, he realized he would be walking home alone. It was 3 a.m. and everything was dark and quiet. He started to walk down the hill to his house. As he was walking, in the middle of the night, he sees a dog-shaped creature. He stops and panics. The dog starts to get closer, and Martin chooses not to pay attention to it. Once he turns its back to the dog, he felt a presence behind him. When he turns around, he sees a tall figure standing in front of him. The tall figure picks him up and starts throwing him in the air and letting him fall to the ground, laughing in a sinister way. According to him, it was the devil that had revealed himself to him. Once it stopped having its fun with him, Martin ran straight home, and till this day, he confirms it was Satan who was having a little fun with him in the middle of the night. This encounter is a little closer to home. It has to do with my older sister. At a point in our lives, we lived in Denver, Colorado with my aunt and her family. We had limited space, so my sister, who was 9 years old, would share a room in the basement with my cousin Karina, who was 11 years old. One night, they were getting ready for bed in the basement where they would sleep. The basement had a small window, and they would always have it cracked open. The girls would always stay up late and talk. That night, as they were talking, they noticed the street light turning on at the neighbor's house. The neighbor had a detecting motion light that would turn on every time someone or something passed in front of it. The lights were off in the room, so the light coming from the window caught the attention of the girls. They take a look and see that it was a black cat walking by the window. They continued to talk and didn't think anything of it. The cat passed by there a second time and caused the light to turn on again. When the light went off, a strong wind blasts through the window and the curtains start to move. As they were looking at the window, the girls noticed smoke was coming out from the bottom of the bed. Terrified, they didn't make a sound. The smoke started to fill the room. In the middle of the darkness, they could see a figure standing in the middle of the room. They noticed the shape of a tall figure forming in the smoke. It was the devil staring right at them, dancing in one leg. They let out a loud scream. They had screamed for over 2 minutes. It was like their screams were silent. Once the family heard the screaming, they ran to the basement to see what was going on. Once my aunt turned on the lights, the smoke was gone. My sister talks about this story and confirms to me that what she saw that night was a man figure with horns, red eyes, feet of a chicken, and a goat. Several people share the same description of the devil. If you have had any experience with something similar, please leave a comment down below. This other encounter takes place in my grandmother's hometown in Mexico. She mentions this story of a relative of hers named Omar. Omar loved to drink. He would spend most of his time and money at a local cantina. Once the bar closed down, everyone had to part ways and walk home. Omar was an older man, and he would take his time to find his way home. In the middle of the night, He begins to walk to his house, using the light of the moon to guide him. As he is crossing a small bridge, he can see his house. But all of a sudden, he hears the baby cry. He stops and starts to look around for the child. At the end of the bridge, Omar sees something wrapped in a blanket. As he gets closer, he notices that the sound is coming from the child wrapped in a blanket. He bends down to pick up the baby, and once he's holding the baby, the crying stops. Omar couldn't see the baby's face because the blanket was covering it. His next move was to uncover the baby's face. The baby looks straight into his eyes and says, "Do you like my baby teeth?" The baby smiles and reveals large sharp teeth and a sinister laugh. Omar drops the child to the ground and runs straight to his house. According to my grandma, Omar never walked home alone, especially at night. Until this day, he still says that it was the devil that was wrapped in that blanket. It is said that many people have encountered Satan disguised as an infant. He likes to show himself to those who like to travel alone at night. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you like this video, also give it a like. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys on my next paranormal story.